very honored to have with us Rabbi Dovid Greene from Rochester, Minnesota, home of Chabad of Rochester and home of the quite well-known Mayo Clinic. So Rabbi, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And let's start at the beginning. How long have you been Chabad at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota?
Well, good evening, everybody. So let's see, time flies when you're having fun. The Lubavitcher Rebbe sent my wife and myself to Rochester in the summer of 1988.
You came in the summer. That's why you didn't know. You came in the summer.
I'm a Minnesotan, so I knew it was, as they say in the business, winter is coming,
Winter is coming. Yeah, we know about that as well. So you've been there for over 30, 35 years, 33 years. What is the community like in Rochester, and what is the relationship between the community and what we know about, which is the Mayo Clinic, where I know you do a lot of work. So give us a sense. You arrive, it's 1988, there's a community there. What is your relationship like with the community, and what is your relationship like with the hospital?
So the nature of Rochester is that the reason that there is a Rochester basically because of the Mayo Clinic, or as they like to be called, the world famous Mayo Clinic.
Okay.
TWFMZ. So it's a very small community. I think the statistics are 1% of the population of Minnesota is Jewish. So if you're going to go with what the numbers that were when we originally came, so that would be just 600 Jews. If I do my math correctly, it's doubled. The size of the community has doubled, but the number of people that come through Rochester on a yearly basis for seeking medical need, specifically their own medical care, numbers in the millions. So we estimate between, I think they say around 2 million new patients a year. So we estimate around 15 to 20,000 Jewish neshamas come through here seeking medical care, and that's not taking consideration the people that are here for doing a residency, doing a fellowship, coming for coursework, for business. When I say coursework, a cardiologist or an endocrinologist will come for a week to be able to either give a lecture, be lectured, or give a lecture or study. My father, Allah Shalom, would talk about the mother that says she has 2 sons in Harvard Medical School, one's studying medicine and one's being studied.
So you move out to Rochester. You're obviously driven by the Rebbe's passion to make the world a godly place. It's not what we commonly think of. You're going to have a community, well, you'll have a day camp and a Hebrew school. You are really there to service the people in the world famous Mayo Clinic. So a couple of questions come to mind. Let's start maybe at the beginning. What prompted you and your family to decide this is how we are going to make the world a place ready for Mashiach, as opposed to saying, let me move to a community, start a Hebrew school, start a summer camp, start teaching and doing community programming and so on, and instead devote yourself to a very transient type of community of people who are there under very stressful circumstances. And Baruch Hashem, you're there to help them. How did you decide to do that?
When I get the answer, I'll let you know. I saw that in the there's an aspect of so I was somewhat recruited to come to go to Lubavitch Yeshiva. That's an interesting story in itself, a personal story that, so I grew up in Minneapolis. I'm a Minneapolis boy. My father was a professor at the University of Minnesota. His name, we just celebrated his 10th yard site, Greene. Some may have heard of him, may have not. And he was very devoted to Jewish causes in general and Chabad in particular. He was very turned on by the message from the Rebbe. So when it came time for me to go to high school, I was actually, of all things, I almost went to Chicago. I was invited, the Chicago Telz Yeshiva offered my father that I should come to the yeshiva there as they say in Yiddish, Umsitz, full scholarship for the entire high school. That
It included an apartment, a Corvette, and money under the table.
My basketball wasn't that good. So like hoop dreams, right? So that, but I was this news, my father was very happy with that. I mean, a good Jewish community, a very well-respected Jewish learning institution, and to be able to be a professor on an academic salary, being able to have that opportunity was win-win-win. My two older sisters had actually gone to Eider Crown Jewish Girls School, where
Sure.
I think it was being held at B'nai Ruvain at the time. That's where they went to school there. So there was a lot of familiarity. So my father shared this information with the local shliach, who shared this information with the Rebbe's secretariat, and then the Rebbe instructed that they'll match directed to match the offer.
You were highly recruited.
Yeah. So and so my parents sent me. Like, it's not like my kids. My kids tell me where I was going to be sending them, but I was sent. So I was sent eventually to Montreal, the Yeshiva Montreal, there, because that was a place that had secular subjects and a dormitory. And at that time in Chabad, there were like just 3 yeshivas like that. There was Montreal, Ocean Park, or Brooklyn and Ocean Parkway, and in Florida. There was no Los Angeles yeshiva at that time. That was prior to that. And Pittsburgh did not have a dormitory.
You must have liked cold weather to go to Montreal.
I don't know. There was a connection. My father lectured for Chabad, and there was an association with the Rosh Yeshiva there, a member of the Vada'ir, Rabbi Isaac Shvei. So I went because of that connection. Being in that community, and it's a diverse community, and at the same time, the devoted Chassidim, it was a big it was a turn on for me. I engaged in the learning, and I continued my studies there. Eventually, so in that, and especially my engagement in the Mivsoim program, which was when the Bavitch Bochrim students, they go on Fridays to various business people and put on film with them. So that I was spoiled because the Sephardi community, the French Moroccan community, were so inspirational to me. When you go over to a person in his beautiful store and you ask him to put on tefillin, and in the middle of his store he puts on tefillin, it busted through all barriers for me and any type of apprehension that I would have. And one of the things with Wolf Greene, who was a mashpia in the yeshiva, I remember one time him verbringing, turning it to a direction towards ourselves. Like, if you go to and you meet a person and you're asking to put on tefillin and he's resistant, and you're going to say, why should be resistant? Just to put on tefillin, for goodness sake, it just take a couple minutes. He would challenge the Bachim and says, did you get up in time to say Shema, the recital of Shema, in the right time, before the ticker, before that time, the correct time passes. So he changed the challenge back to you. So it was a symbiotic reaching out to others and working on yourself and learning from them. And it was a win-win, like I would say, in that. So eventually I was, after getting married, and I'm jumping way ahead, I'm in New York, I get married, and the shliach from Minnesota comes and approaches me, and approaches myself and my wife, of course, and offers us this opportunity. And we wrote into the Rebbe because it sounded intriguing. I mean, the background with my father's being in the medical, the scientific field, so being in an environment where there's a lot of rational thought that is going on, a lot of scientific rational thought, at the same time to infuse it with a spirituality and a connection to God. It's not as striking a balance as much as I think Jews were more about juggling. We're holding two opposites at the same time. So that was intriguing. We got the go ahead, and that's why they sent out young couples, because older people would know better. In that way. My father would remember a joke. He says a guy won the lottery. They asked him, how did you know which numbers to choose? He says, look, if 7 is lucky and 7 times 7, and the winning number was 48. He says, my luck, I don't know math. So I'm talking of that, and then we think about that, and because there's so much also continuing to learn, people in these circumstances that come here. One of your questions was about meeting. You mentioned about meeting people in tough situations. The amazing thing is, I would submit to you, it's absolutely the opposite. Yes, they're in tough situations, but these are people that are going from all over the world because they want to get well. They have such aspirations, hope, anticipation, and that's there's another the joke that 3 people were given the same diagnosis: a Russian, a Frenchman, and a Jew, that they have 6 months to live. So they ask them, what's the Russian? Russian says, I'm going to take all my money, I'm going to liquidate, and I'm going to drink away the next 6 months. They come to the Frenchman, what are you going to do? He's going to say, I'm going to take all my money and I'm going to spend it on women. So they come to the Yid and they ask him, what are you going to do? He says, I'm going to go to the bank, take out all my money and travel and get a second opinion.
So they've come to the Mayo Clinic, your family is there, you're dealing with people who are in very difficult situations. How has it changed you, your family? How has this experience shaped your 35 years and your children grow up with this, being surrounded by, let's face it, a lot of difficult situations, a lot of sadness, people are coming there to get well. We know the ways of the world, they don't always get well. How has that taken an impact or made an impact on yourself, your family, and how are you different now, 35 years later?
Well, this is I had an opportunity when we first came out, and when we first came out, we traveled back to New York. My wife is from Brooklyn. If any of you have ever heard of Raskin Fish, that's my wife's family. If you don't, now you heard of it. So just the commercial, that's sponsored by, right?
Brought to you by.
So so I had the opportunity to meet with the Rebbe's the chief of the secretariat, the chief of staff, Rabbi Chadakov, who was actually the director of Merkaz Le'inyonei Chinuch. He was the liaison. So I had a chance to meet with him, and he described to me, and this has become a mantra, that it was way at the beginning, that he said to me in Yiddish, I'll say it in English, he says, God is omnipotent and can send every person their healing wherever they are. The divine providence, the hashgacha pratis, why people come to Rochester, is to meet you, and they should participate in your work, become partners in your work. So really, the setting down the marker that hashgacha pratis is the core, and it's from what it's a posuk at Tehillim, it's a bracha we say every day, mechi mitzadi gover, and it's truly breathed and lived. And it's like when you meet somebody there, it's not about their problems, it's about meeting this person. Whatever we could do, we do. But that's the transformational aspect, is it keeps it very, what can I say, very buoyant, very infused with life, because each person is unique. There are no two people alike, and they each come with their own unique circumstances. And again, it's a lot of that reframing of not going to say unique problems, I'll say unique circumstances, to literally that framing aspect changes a whole perspective.
So bring us up to date. Everything's going along, you're meeting people, you're helping them, they're traveling, they're coming from all over the world, seeking their healing. You're there to be supportive, you're there to hold their hand, you're there to make them partners into your work. And now it's March 2020, and all of a sudden the world has shut down. We can only imagine the Mayo Clinic becomes a whole different focus. We created this program that we've been doing since then in response to to the shutdown and gave us a chance to help people get ready for Pesach and then continue on. And even though, thank God, things are opening up and people are out and about, but what was it like when your whole identity is this sort of transient community and this access to the hospital, and now all of a sudden you can't? I'm imagining you couldn't even walk into the hospital.
So yeah, that was right. The air, it was like the air was sucked out of the room. It was like there's nothing. It was phenomenal. When I say phenomenal, it was just like, so that again, hashgacha pratis, we in the course of time, we've developed relationships with many doctors that live in Rochester, many. And so it was time to pivot. But I remember that first Shabbos, because that week I called up people that never, ever come to shul, ever. And I told them on the phone, I said, I started calling up people, don't come to shul. Everybody laughed. And it broke the ice. So we created a connection with them. How are you doing? We're here. What do you know? And because of that, remember, so the whole world was sucked out of Rochester, but all the people from Rochester weren't going anywhere. There's not a meeting. There ain't no vacation. There ain't no going to Hawaii for a neurology conference. You are in Rochester. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You're in Rochester. So then we turned around. What can we do? Of course, we became experts in Zoom, right? But this, I actually used it as a way eventually to say, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that. And it helps people. We had to break the mold that it's not about synagogue services. It's about this connectivity. What can we do? My son that had just come 5 years ago, like we're meeting him on the street also. He's in a different household. So we're saying but we finding things to keep busy. Not keep busy. It's like there's no excuse. We don't have any other distractions except to go through who has a Rolodex, but to go through the numbers to make sure everybody is gotten in contact with. It's like, if this is what it is, this is what it's supposed to be. So how are we going to respond to it? There was one, because of that, there was one circumstance, a specific story. I think it was Lubavitch International caught up with the woman about it. She wrote an article about it. So you have a chance when there's Minnesota and you can be outside a little bit. I'm on the phone in the front yard, so a woman's walking by and she says, Shalom. I'm like, you talking to me? And it was a woman who had just dropped off her husband at the hospital that he was going to be undergoing heart surgery. It's like, here you go. No staying with your husband. You travel half around the world. They were here already, so they're going to have the surgery. That's it. Drop him off like at daycare, but you can't call up. And because of this, we were able to connect and help her with what she needed for Pesach. And she said, if I would have seen you in Haifa or Tel Aviv, I wouldn't have said hello. You're not we don't run in the same circles. Here, she sees somebody. She goes over. Okay, I will admit the truth. As soon as she saw him, she started speaking to me. I said, "Hold on." I ran inside and got my wife. So that she had real world issues. So I had to get somebody that could deal with the real world. She didn't need a philosophical answer. She needed a practical. How we're going to take care of things, and that's that type of thing. I mean, it's about pivoting, finding, and that's what we got to do.
Amazing. So, Rabbi, thank you. First of all, thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you for the work that you do way up there in Rochester and being so supportive. I mean, true baseline chesed, kindness. Supporting people who are going through a difficult time, supporting the sickly people, supporting their families. Being there for them, knowing that they're not abandoned, even though they may be physically isolated. Can you give us one more quick story just to take us home? One more inspirational story, somebody who you met, just to give us a little taste of what life is like, being supportive to the community up there in Rochester and the world famous Mayo Clinic.
Well, it was funny to put this into a different two stories. The hotels are closed. Just in the in the big halls because they had nobody else using them. We were able to do that. One doctor one time came to me. It was something that in this last her Satmar Chassid came. But he'd be 2 weeks after the surgery to be able to put on tefillin himself. So I went in and put on tefillin. And I come in the second day, I get a call from the family. You should call this number when you're in the hospital. So Brooklyn number. So I come in, we're going to put on tefillin. I call up the number, and it's the home of the Satmar Rebbe. So I give him the phone because he was a Satmar Chassid. He wanted to speak to his Rebbe. So he was asking, daven for me. And so he gives me back the phone. Baruch will get this perhaps more. I was chomping at the bit to ask him, which one are you? But but I held myself a little bit. I may be from the Midwest, but we have a little sophistication. But he was showering us with blessings. But it's so interesting how these circumstances bring us together to help Jews know. You get like the image of a Lubavitcher is inviting a person who's not necessarily observant to put on tefillin. This case, I was invited by a Satmar to put on tefillin on himself. So it's all about getting us over the finish line to creating a critical mass of good, so that they tip the scales of the balance. And that could just be one more deed and one more thought, one more action to tip the scales of the world for Geula v'Yeshua, for salvation and redemption with the coming of Mashiach. And sometimes you appreciate it more in these. Like when it gets winter over here, right? It gets gray and brown, right? And where's life? And we start wearing things that are more gray and brown, but still we infuse it with energy. And there's always hope, and that's what we anticipate is the coming of Mashiach now.
Amen. So, Rabbi, thank you 1,000 thank yous. Sorry, my internet cut out there, but I see you now. Appreciate your spending time with us, and Yashikoah for all the good that you're doing for so many. Hashem should bring us the ultimate healing with the coming of Mashiach.
Amen.
So thank you so much. Good night. Reminder, tomorrow night, 8:30, the Mayo class. That's our new project. Starts at 8:30. We'll see you tomorrow night. I'll send out the recording. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Thank you, Rabbi Greene. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All the best. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.